Just a reminder that salvation has nothing to do with your behavior.
This is teaching for women. So Yeshua said that the Pharisees were fools for not believing what the prophets said about him. That's why they couldn't even recognize him who stood before them. He said in John 5, verse 37 through 47, to search the scriptures, for in them you'll find your eternal salvation. It was what was testified of him by the prophets. And if you don't believe what Moses wrote of him, how shall you believe his words? Moses wrote in Deuteronomy 18:15 through 19 that Jehovah would rise up a prophet, Yeshua. He would give everything desired at Horeb in the day of assembly, saying, let me not hear the Lord's voice anymore, that we die not. And the people will spoken which they had spoken. He would rise him up a prophet, Yeshua. Jehovah would put his words in that prophet's mouth and give us commandments. He would send that prophet in his name, Jehovah's name, Yahushua, Jehovah's salvation. And whoever didn't listen to that prophet, his son, which he would send in his name, and what he commanded, Jehovah will require of them. Acts 3:15 through 18. Therefore be converted so your sins can be blotted out in the times of refreshing. Refreshing of what? What was desired at Horeb in the day of the assembly that his son was prophesied to give us, that Moses wrote, all the prophets wrote. In the Old Testament, he said the Pharisees were fools for not believing the prophets. That's why they couldn't recognize the son who stood before them. And whoever doesn't listen to that prophets, in Acts 3, Jehovah will destroy from among the people. That mercy that Yeshua performed in Luke chapter 1, verse 72, the mercy he would perform in the covenants he would remember. For Romans 10 says they have a zeal for God, not according to knowledge. And Jehovah says his people die for a lack of knowledge. Because they reject his law, he will reject them and their people and their children. The covenants. Their ignorance of Jehovah's righteousness in Romans 10, and have established their own righteousness. Because what was prophesied by the prophets in the Old Testament that Yeshua would do was give them the covenants he would remember, the mercy he would perform. The covenant he confirmed with many for 1 week before he ceased sacrifice midweek, Daniel 9, verse 27. For Jehovah Jehovah keeps covenants and has mercy on thousands of them who love him and keep his commandments. Deuteronomy chapter 5 tells you what was given at Horeb in the day of the assembly, where they heard Jehovah's voice. They saw no similitude, Deuteronomy 4 and 5. And the people well spoken which they had spoken, Deuteronomy 5. He gave them the 10 commandments with his voice, and he added no more. And then he wrote the 10 commandments on 2 tables of stone and delivered them unto Moses. Not to be confused with the sacrificial law. The law added to the covenants because of transgression until the seed should come which the promise was made. For the handwriting of ordinances that was a witness against them due to transgression, After Horeb at Mount Sinai with the golden calf, Moses wrote in a book and placed in the side of the Ark of the Covenants. Deuteronomy 31:24. The 2 tables of stone that Jehovah wrote with his own finger, the covenants that he gave with his voice at Horeb, he instructed Moses to put inside the Ark of the Covenants under the mercy seats, which his son's blood spilt upon, performing the mercy and remembering the covenants that he was prophesied to give them, the 10 Commandments. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mights. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5 through 25. The 10 Commandments will be your righteousness, what Yeshua quoted verbatim. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Leviticus 19:15 through 18. To do righteous judgment. What's Jehovah's righteousness? The 10 Commandments, the covenants. Do righteous judgments. Do no unrighteousness and judgments. Love your neighbor by rebuking the sin of them. Love them by rebuking them instead of stoning them. Have mercy on them, for Jehovah has mercy and keeps covenant with thousands of them who love him and keep his commandments. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 9 and 10. Because Jehovah doesn't change, Malachi 3, so you know his judgment. For John the Baptist came in the spirit of Elijah to pave the way for the Messiah. And Malachi 4 tells you what that prophet Elijah, he would send, that would pave the way for the Messiah, would give them the same covenants at Horeb, the 10 Commandments. You're not saved by the dead works of the sacrificial law. No, the handwriting of ordinances that was a witness against them that Moses wrote in a book until it was finished. The handwriting of ordinances that was a witness against them until the seed should come. And Colossians 2:14 was nailed to the stake, not the covenants that his son would remember, the covenants and mercy that he would perform, that the prophets told you he would give you to keep. Don't turn the grace of God into lasciviousness, Jude 1:4. Unbridled lust, wantonness, shamelessness, the doctrine you can come before the Lord shameless in your sin because you have unmerited favor. No, the grace of God in Titus 2, G5485, the Greek word charis, especially divine influence upon the heart and the reflection in life. Titus 2 teaches you to deny sin. Deny sin and lusts of this world so you can live soberly, without pride, and righteously. Jehovah's righteousness. Don't be ignorant of it. Don't be ignorant of what the prophets said. Don't die for a lack of knowledge because you reject his law, his covenants that he keeps with those who love him and keep his commandments. Women are not to teach men. You can teach women and children, but you should not be teaching anything because you don't even know the gospel. You don't even know what the Son came to do. You don't know what the grace of God is that teaches you to turn away from your sin, his conviction, his divine influence upon your heart so you can keep those 10 commandments. And they are not grievous, 1 John 5. For this is how we love the children of God, when we love God and keep his commandments. For this is the love of God, to keep his commandments. And they are not grievous. And they're not the work of the dead works, the sacrificial law. No, they are your